was asked to talk about the Malaysian experience, some lessons, and maybe I'll share about 10 of them that I think could be quite useful. Let me start with the functions of capital market authorities. In the developing world is a little bit different than in the more developed countries. Here we have to do what we call financial sector development. We also have to do the oversight and supervisory work over all the capital market players. And since I think even as early as the Asian crisis and then the global crisis in 2007-08, they've added these stability functions, which they've made it much more onerous than before. And the CMA, in its development effort, must also make sure that it's always cognizant of the stability functions. Now, why a capital market master plan in Malaysia? In Malaysia, we were pushed both by external factors and domestic factors. On the domestic front, as we were developing, there was a lot of need for long-term financing. If you've been to Malaysia, you would see the infrastructure is actually quite advanced for a developing country, and a lot of it is private sector driven. So there is a need to have long-term funding and also to take away the risk from depositors for such lending and let the investors take the direct risk. Then we were also, prior, like 10 years before the crisis, we were really being pushed by the industrial world to open the financial sector to foreign content. We already had very high foreign content. There were many banks that are 100% owned by foreigners. And we also had, but we closed our doors. No more banks, no more financial intermediaries. We felt overbanked and there were too many financial institutions, and we wanted to consolidate. On the top of that, we said foreigners can only take 30% of shareholding if they ever want. That means they have to buy the existing shares, and if the bank is listed, they have to queue. You know, there's a queuing system for you to take on stocks from on the stock exchange if you're a foreigner. So we had tremendous pressure from the United States, Europe, and Australia. So what we thought is, okay, we actually do want foreigners to come in because we have so many 100% owned foreign institutions, and because we had closed the doors to new participants, we are actually protecting them. And because we are protecting them, they do loans, they do deposits, simple transactions, and they make a lot of money. They didn't have to innovate because no new participants were coming in. But in order to open to new players, we wanted to develop the local market. We wanted Malaysian firms to be able to compete. And more important, we wanted to build some big financial institutions, big banks, because we found that during the crisis, foreign banks stopped lending. Because what they see is the headlines in the media. They don't really know what is happening in the country. And instructions are coming from boards in London, New York. So we said, no, we need to have strong domestic banks, strong financial institutions that do the bridge to continue lending during a crisis. Because the moment you don't have lending, that is when your GDP all really go into negative territory. So to do that, we need time. And therefore, the master plan, was conceived. And the first master plan was a 10-year from 2000 to 2010, and it was on both sides. We had a holistic approach. That means in the case of Malaysia, we are a country of plans. We have a financial master plan, we have innovation plans, we have all kinds of plans, but we do implement and we do, track and work on the success factors. In Malaysia, we have a 10-year perspective plan that looks forward, where we want to be in 10 years. From there, we have a regular 5-year plan that is faithfully new plan every 5 years. And this plan has been very helpful because it will identify where are the sectors of growth, where do we want, new areas to develop, what are the growth drivers, is it commodities, how big, if it is manufacturing, what specific areas. It gives out a message to the private sector that these are the areas the government have researched and think that is good for growth, and these are the financing needs. It's a comprehensive plan. I've participated in drafting these plans ever since I can remember. And therefore, from there, the financial sector plans just, fall out. In the 5-year plan, there is a chapter on finance. Then, and focusing really on all the monetary policy expectations on inflation and so forth. So we have that plan. So we just take it forward, carry on the details for the financial sector. So this was, and then these plans are then, the measures are actually effected annually during the budget. That is when all the measures are announced and followed up during the year. Now, we did the capital market master plan and the financial sector master plan. They were two separate plans and done independently, but, on the base of the 5-year plan. Now, once we, embark that, we will use the plans in order to stall, all the foreign pressures to say that, look, we are doing this, and by 2007, if the plan, if we achieve what we want to achieve, we will start opening up market access to foreign players. So that sort of, keep these pressures and we can focus on what we want to do. Having done that, then we had a long and very intense debate. What is it that we want? And this is relevant to our discussions in Rwanda. Whether you want to be a financial sector, a center, or we want to be an enabler of growth. So we looked at Ireland, we looked at Taiwan, Korea. Ireland was, an eye-opener for us in the sense that they liberalized and they really moved up. Of course, later they had banking problems and all that. But at that time, they liberalized the real sector and they really, had exponential growth. So we thought, okay, what are the benefits of being a financial center? Because Malaysia has such a big real sector, it didn't make sense to be a financial center because financial center requires a lot of other features that if we were, to do it, we can put a lot of risk on the real sector because any problems in the financial sector, it just, moves very rapidly to the real sector. So we thought our strength is really in the real sector. I mean, we are still commodity based, but exports of manufacturers is like 60% of total exports. Tourism was doing very well. We were starting to export. Education was an export commodity. So we were doing very well on goods and services. So we thought, okay, it's best that we remain. Our strength is in the real sector. So the financial sector plan had this major drive to become an enabler of growth. Although at that time, we were already like 12% of GDP in terms of our contribution. And once you decide that, then it's easy to go. So I don't know how much has been the discussions in Rwanda between, what really you want and, the risk of a financial center for the longer term. And I thought, personally, I think there should be a very intense and very deep discussion before you see the direction that you want to go. I mean, I've seen the reports, and the reports by consultants seem to suggest that. We also engage consultants, and I know there are consultants here, but just they have to have one track. The consultants we had was just liberalize, and actually we stopped our consultants halfway and then did it ourselves. Now, the next point I wanted to make is, having decided, okay, where you want, the direction you want, the stakeholder management, as we drafted the plan and as we implement it. 3 groups that we paid, that you need to pay attention to. The private sector was easy. They were part of us. They were part of the team. We set up focus groups, implementation plan, had private sector in the group, etc. So it was fine. They contributed. It was very interactive. Parliament was very important, because your financial sector plan will require changes in the legislation. You can't run away from that. And having a legal framework as a basis of the plan is very important. In fact, okay, you start with the policies. After that, we looked at the legal framework. What is it that we need? 2 instances of managing the parliamentarians that I was personally involved and didn't do it right. One was just before the crisis. It's not related to the plan, but it's part of financial sector reform. Before the crisis, money supply was growing like crazy. Bank lending was 20% and we really need to slow down the economy. The bankers won't listen. They say Bank Negara, which is a central bank, is crying wolf. We are fine, nothing is going to happen. We did all the prudential measures and it didn't work. So finally we decided we want to curb bank lending to non-productive sectors. Non-productive sectors can only lend 20% of new lending. Now, what is productive? We did our definitions and all that. The way we are structured, I do the policies in my group. I have 5 departments under me, about 500 people. I do the policies. The regulatory group will do the implementation. So, okay, worked with them on definition. And now they say, we've done everything. It's okay. We'll announce and we can go. Lo and behold, the productive sectors, non-productive sectors are all real estate. And the nexus between the real estate and Parliament is the same in the US, everywhere. They are very powerful. My God, we had Parliament cursing us, and I spent the next 2 months doing nothing but damage control. And that's why implementation and managing the parliamentarians is so important. My next incident was on the credit bureau. I was part of the team. We revamped the entire credit bureau. I think it was actually during the Asian crisis, because we found that banks were not lending. And because they didn't know how much a creditor had with the other banks. So we really did we think that it is an example of a very strong credit bureau. The moment you have a credit card, you are on the list. So, okay, we had to amend the Central Bank Act for confidential information, not to go to a third party and all that. Then I met what we call the backbenchers. The backbenchers. They are groups in Parliament that are influential. They can, sort of influence other members. So if you can influence them, you're okay. So we had to amend the Central Bank Act. And the question parliamentarian asked me was, will my second wife know how much financing that I got for my third wife? That really, I mean, I'm never short of answer. It really stumped me. But so one of my juniors was fast. He said, no, it's very safe. Whatever you gave your third wife, your second wife will not know, because that is why we want you to approve the law that protects third party from having the information. So we got on free. So, so these are the things that it was good that my young officer, was so agile on his feet. But, I was just stumped that this is all parliamentarians think about, But, so these are things that you really have to manage, some critical stakeholders. Of course, the other one that you have to manage is among yourselves, the regulatory authorities. There is no way you can carry on a capital market plan without the cooperation of the central bank. Now, in Malaysia, like in many countries, there is what I call competitive rivalry between authorities. All of us want to be the best authority. We want the investors to think we are the best. And the central bank and the Capital Market Authority, which is the Securities Commission, they talk, but certain things, they compete. So we are competing on our plan. Who has the best plan? And we actually didn't really discuss the plan, but we sort of know where we both are going, and it is okay. Then when it comes to implementation, then we discuss, because in the Securities Commission, you cannot move because the central bank controls measures affecting flows of funds. So we do need them, to liberalize whether transactions or do certain measures. So we do talk after the plans was launched. But my message would be, cooperation between authorities is really what is the tone at the top. The tone at the top would dictate, to all the officials how the two agencies should work together. And in Rwanda, the fact that the central bank governor came and participated for quite a length of the session is a good tone from the top. So officials actually know that you really have to work together. So for that, I think you are already on the way, so it's not an issue. The other key stakeholder is a stock exchange. That is a key, what you call self-regulatory organization under the Securities Commission, and we really need to make sure that they are also on board on all the things that we want to do. The next point is, which I think several persons raised during our sessions, is targets. In both the Capital Market Master Plan and the financial sector, we fix targets. And for each target, of course, there are specific measures and there are timelines. Generally, for both the plans, it was in phases, and so there'll be targets in all the phases. The first is to enhance your domestic capacity. The second, once you have achieved this enhancement, you move on to the next stage of intensifying the competition amongst all the players in the market, and between the domestic owned and the foreign owned, we leveled the playing field. And this is to prepare the domestic players when we open up the market. Then the next phase is opening up the market. So there are two major checkpoints, and there is a comprehensive review at both these checkpoints. So if you don't achieve certain targets, you shouldn't move on to the next. And one of the lessons we learned is, for each area, you build your success factors. Usually, to achieve one measure, you probably need to do 10 other measures. You have to create that positive environment to make sure your measures will actually work. The next one is setting up SROs. The plan did contain, because you don't want to have to do everything. You want the industry to also be self-reliant, and responsible. The stock exchange as an SRO is okay because, they are organized, they are subjected to rules, and now they are subjected to even higher level principles under the IOSCO and all that. But we had issues with the unit trust sector. The Malaysian unit trust sector had really expanded, and it is a good thing to have. But we wanted the industry to self-regulate, and I think this is an area where we fell short, because there were areas like when you deal with SROs, you really need to look at the licensing, and some of it are you always say legacy issues, but if it is legacy issues, then maybe you shouldn't do the plumbing. You may just need to build a total new house, for example. So because we didn't do so well, we actually did not do as well when the IOSCO came, and a lot of the, undesirable features and all that actually cropped up, and you had to redo all over again. So having SROs is something I personally think I don't really recommend, unless you are really at a very advanced stage, because I don't feel the industry really spends money to build capacity. They actually leave it. They feel that all these oversight supervisory work should be done by the authority. So that is on the SROs. The last point I have is really about, I have two more points. Corporate governance. Now, in Malaysia, during the crisis, we adopted all the corporate governance codes of the OECD and all that. For us, because we had restrictions on capital flows, when we developed our capital market, residents invest more and more in the market, because to invest abroad, they can, but it was not so easy. We have two basic philosophy. If it is your own money, you can take out freely, because you don't owe the country anything, it's your own money. But as long as you have a borrowing, then we have a right, because you are using national savings. Therefore, we have some right as to what you can take abroad. So because of that, we do have restrictions. So they invest in our local market. The stock market grew, the bond market grew. But in a country our corporate governance came out later when we wanted to integrate more under the second financial sector and capital market master plan. We wanted to integrate with the global markets and the regional markets. Then we strengthened a lot. So the second capital market plan was growth and governance. Now, in the case of Rwanda, where you do not have any regulations relating to monies flowing in and out, even if you expand your market, you do a lot of products, your residents still have a choice whether they want to invest in your market or they want to go abroad. Now, what is it that will make them invest in the market? Is governance. So we are finding it the same in the case of Indonesia, which they have like 26 million of rich people, say 10% of the population. And yet their equity market couldn't grow. Lots of money that McKinsey and all that estimate like as much as $200 billion are in Singapore, invested in Singapore, in real estate, in the region and all that. That is because, why is it that residents are not investing? they are not comfortable with the governance framework. So this is, I thought, something that maybe in drafting your capital market master plan that you want to look at this issue of governance. And we talk about governance, it is very deep. It is not just appointment of board directors and all that. It is really governance of the entire financial sector. The last point is really on regional integration. Since a lot of it was discussed today, in the case of Southeast Asia, the philosophy is that you need to develop your domestic market first in order to be able to integrate. To have a good regional market, domestic markets must be strong. So we did a lot of integration on the trade side, and that is like more or less completed. Most of our intra-trade is now at zero tariffs. But for the financial sector, we started a bit later, and we have achieved quite significant milestones. On the currency, common currency, we've abandoned it because we don't think that it is feasible. A customs union is something that you can aim. But even that, the philosophy now is more to allow, to build frameworks where individual countries can do bilateral, but within a structured framework so that other countries, when they are ready, they can come on board. Say the trade, the exchange link, where the one that I mentioned, where you can trade in each other's markets using local brokers, for which you need to do a lot of mutual recognition of legislation, licensing, and all that. Even for that, which took quite a while, it was only Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore that could meet the requirements. The others can come on board as they want. So there's a lot of work going on all this mutual recognition and all that, but it will take a long time. I think a lot of regulations, mutual recognition and all that is not so easy. It may seem quite easy on the surface, but it takes quite a bit of time to do. I understand that you need to look at regional markets to build scale, but strengthening your domestic market is not a trade-off for building a regional market. I think that 10 lessons should be enough for the day, and enjoy your meal. Thank you.